Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Hoyos. I'm one of the co-founders of the Conscious Fund. And with me today, I have a pretty amazing panel. We have Kelly Ramsden. She's the co-founder and COO of Mind Cure Health. We've got Mr. Peyton Nyquist from Numinous, the co-founder, chairman, and CEO. And then we also have Ronan Levy, who's a co-founder and executive chairman of Field Trip Health. So three Canadian companies, great folks, great companies, and all three companies are public, which is what this panel is about, life in the public markets. We'll be chatting a little bit about what their experiences have been like going public and then running publicly traded companies, some of the challenges, a little bit about what their experience has been like, and hopefully we'll be able to get a lot of great lessons from them. So before we dive into some questions, why don't we just go around real quick and each of you can just briefly introduce yourselves and your companies. Maybe Kelsey, if you want to start us off.
Sure, yeah, top left, we'll do it like The Price is Right or whatever that show used to be. Yeah, I'm Kelsey Ramsden. I'm the president and CEO of Mind Cure Health, where we investigate and develop molecules to alleviate pain and give hope to people who are suffering. And we develop digital therapeutics to afford us a great opportunity to support those in the long tail of care as well.
I'll hop in next, just because I'm sitting below Kelsey, and Kelsey was kind enough to invite me to join. So, hey, I'm Ronan Levy, co-founder and executive chairman of Field Trip Health. At Field Trip, our mission is to bring the world to life through psychedelics and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies. And one of the things that I really try to emphasize is that psychedelics and healthcare, I think, in the future is not going to be about just trying to heal the sick and alleviating suffering, but about elevating people, above baseline. It's I think, a whole new realm emerging in terms of how we think about what humanity is, what life is, and what healthcare is. And so at Field Trip, we're focused on the end-to-end delivery of psychedelic therapies, from the development of new products and new drugs all the way to the clinical implementation through our Field Trip Health centers that are opening across North America right now.
Thanks. I'm Peyton Nyquist, chair and co-founder and CEO of Numinous Wellness. At Numinous, we are addressing the universal desire to heal and be well, and echoing just what both Kelsey and Ronan said around not only really looking to change the healthcare landscape, but also really looking at wellness as well, and the potential that psychedelic medicine and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy can contribute to that.
Awesome, thank you guys. So I think to get started, I think it'd be good to maybe take a step back and talk a little bit about your respective journeys, starting your companies and then making the decision to ultimately go public. Maybe we could just go around and just talk a little bit about what that thought process was like when you decided to go public versus not, and at what stage did you decide to do that in your in your company's journey? And relatively early on, or had you already raised a few rounds before going public? Help us understand the journey a little bit. And maybe we can start with Ronan.
Sure. I was going to defer to Kelsey again, but I'm happy to hop in. So Field Trip was born in inception sometime in 2018 and really coalesced in 2019. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do you build a business in a psychedelic industry where most molecules are still scheduled. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. We had grown up through the Canadian medical cannabis industry back in 2013. We got involved in 2014 through 16. We were operating, and then we sold to Aurora Cannabis, and really, timed it nicely and rode Aurora from 40-cent shares where we sold our business to, it peaked out at, I think, $16 or $17. So it was an incredible run. There was a lot of fun being had during that time. Some maybe questionable decisions made along the way by some of the larger cannabis companies, and there was a real reckoning that happened over the last couple of years. It's time, we're starting to get through it now, and things are stabilizing and the valuations are starting to creep back up. But having gone through that roller coaster, we were actually quite reticent to go public, had a desire to stay private for as long as possible. We had good access to capital. We had fortunately collected a good investor base who had a lot of faith in us and the story we were building behind Field Trip. And then there's this thing called COVID, which really changed the entire economic landscape for us. And so while our ambitions were to stay private as long as possible, as soon as the market started roiling in April, May of last year, even though there was a really bright spark in the psychedelics industry, the feedback we kept getting from investors across the board was, love the business, want to participate, but need access to liquidity because I don't know what the next 6 months or year looks like. And so I need to have some optionality built into this. And so that shifted our plans to go from staying private for as long as possible to accelerating and go public, because we did see that in this emerging sector, access to capital is going to be a critical component to the success of the companies. And so we made the decision kind of middle of last year to start on the path to going public. Timing was TBD, but things coalesced pretty quickly. We got a lot of investor interest, and then we listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange on October 6th, so about 3 or 4 months ago. And the public markets are a double-edged sword. They do offer a lot of things: access to capital, a lot of excitement. You get a great platform to get your message out there, but costs of compliance are hard. There's a lot of rules that don't make a lot of sense that you still have to comply with, notwithstanding their irrationality. So it's been positive certainly, but it's not always a uniformly easy decision to make.
Yeah, I'll dovetail in there if you're looking for us to go around the circle. I think I echo 99% of what Ronan said, and I would say I think we listed maybe a week or two before Field Trip, so similar timeline. From our perspective, the idea of going public versus not going public was really rooted in being at the table of spreading the message and the framework and the framing of psychedelic medicine. I think just being a public company, you're exposed to the markets in a greater way that you can participate in how some of the rollout is perceived. I think is really important this time around when we have another chance at expanding and I think elevating humanity. This notion of like making sure that part of that narrative is about that piece. And as a patient of psychedelic medicine, just thinking it's really important to drive some of the practice of it. So for us, part of being on the public side of things was around being at that culture shaping table, but as well, the downside, my first businesses were totally private. And so you focused 100% of your attention every single day on building. There was no distraction of market attention or any of that kind of thing. So I would say that to me, I made a joke the other day because we're just closing a round, and I made a joke to a friend that in the old days I used to pay interest just to the bank, but now I just pay it in time and flesh. Like you just don't sleep during this part of the thing. It's just a different form of interest, and so reorienting myself to that has been it's different, but it's such a great opportunity. To be able to scale at pace. And like anything, I think if the best survive, and I've always liked that instinct of business, is the people who do the best work will, be there in the long term. And so I like the discipline of capital markets for that, because we saw it happen in cannabis, and it always happens. And so I like the discipline that being in the capital markets demands of our industry, because I think it's imperative that it's there.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'll echo a lot of what's already been said. I would say for us, similar to Ronan, started Numinous in the early 2018, and never really with the intention of going public. Mainly just if you told me 2 years from that moment that we would be sitting talking about, having a panel, having this discussion around psychedelic medicine, I wasn't sure, there was definitely questions as to whether it would advance that quickly or not, but how fast the field has continued to grow and expand, and looking at the clinical trial numbers and the amount of research that's happening and the interest in the space, obviously, in light of what's going on with COVID, mental health and new ways of treating mental health have never been more important. And one of the things that we really saw as well is being a private company, we saw so much interest in wanting to support this category. And as a private company, that can sometimes be difficult. And as a public company, you're open to the public, and anybody can come in and support your story or be involved with your journey. And, the mental health touches every single person on this planet, either directly or by one degree of separation. And so to be able to use the public markets to as a tool to be able to amplify your message and allow for support from so many people who are looking to support this category and trying to figure out how, I would agree in terms of the double-edged sword of capital markets, in terms of there's a lot of rules that sometimes you scratch your head quite a lot about. There's definitely costs associated with going public, but the other side of that too is being able to, be in full, plain and true disclosure around what you're doing, where the capital is going, and your intentions around building, and being able to provide that level of disclosure for everybody who's looking to get involved, I think is really important as well. In terms of questions as to when you go public, when we were doing our listing, in the listing statement, there was questions from the TSX around what is MDMA and what is psilocybin, which was a fun little educational piece to do with the TSX around describing what those molecules are. But I think you've got to look at what your growth trajectory is and what's the capital required in order to get there. And obviously, the public markets, the access to capital and ability to raise money is a huge tool to be able to utilize if and when needed.
Awesome, thank you. My next question is around the idea of first mover advantage, and all three of you basically as early entrants into this really new space. Can you speak a little to how important first mover advantage is in this space, both in general, entering the space, but then also in terms of becoming publicly listed and more visible? And maybe Peyton, if you have any thoughts, you could kick us off. As I think maybe you're definitely like one of the first ones to go public. I remember back in March.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, learning more than anything, the ability to start learning and do learning in real time as you're going through, the listing process. We picked a very interesting time to go public. It's sort of the peak of a lot of excitement, and then a big consolidation in the space over the summertime, which provided a lot of learning for us. I think just getting your message out there, getting your story out there, and broadening your shareholder base is important. And really, for us, I think it's still so early in this space. We're barely in the first inning, I think, of what is going to continue to transpire. And so for us, again, just going back to learning and figuring out what's working, what's not working, and as more and more entrants do continue to come into the space, and I think it's great to see, the space getting the attention and growth that it needs right now. It's going to require a lot of paddles in the water, all paddling in the same direction in order to really make the change that psychedelics can make.